The Walt Disney Company appears to be getting schizophrenic about Song of the South as they take down Splash Mountain and replace it with Tiana's Bayou Adventure, even removing the Brer Rabbit weather vane that stood above the gift shop. However, there was a revelation in our discussion today from Joshua Harris that shows that someone within the company is still supporting Song of the South in ways that we could not imagine. Ways that probably cost the company more than six figures to keep this film alive in some way within the Disney vault. If you haven't watched part one, it's not necessary in order to enjoy part two. Just know that the conversation then dovetails into the entire environment that causes Song of the South to be relegated to history as far as the Walt Disney Company is concerned. Anyways, here's the discussion.
And for those who may ask about this, we talked with Valerie Stewart about the issue with the NAACP, or not NAACP. Yes, the NAACP. We talked about the politics surrounding it, and essentially what it came down to apparently was that they wanted a vast amount of creative control over the film in order to endorse it. And Walt said, well, no, that actually can't happen. We maintain ultimate creative control here at the Disney Studios over all the stuff that we do. And then that was what resulted in the kerfuffle, which, according to Valerie Stewart, was so disappointing to James Baskett that he actually, according to her, died in a depressed state over the reaction to the film because he was so careful and loving of what they were doing. And ultimately, he also won an Academy Award for the presentation of Zippity Doo Dah. Disney now has decided that song is irrelevant. That is their official position, is that Zippity Doo Dah is irrelevant today, and they have done everything they can to strip it out, even to the point, and we've never covered this before, we may do this in a full-on video, but even to the point that Disney revoked the rights to that song from Oriental Land Company in order to force the OLC over there in Tokyo Disney to force them to take it off of the playlist, because OLC, according to a source I have there who they know their stuff, they were refusing to even remove it off the background music, and Disney revoked their rights to the music in order to stop that. So if you have any idea of how much pressure OLC has managed to stand up to against Disney and never back down, that is the degree to which they will do it. And Disney would love to take down Splash Mountain there, and they still have not acquiesced to that.
I have a question on this. The last I had heard, Bob Iger's last public statement was that Song of the South should be released in some capacity. That was a very, very long time ago that he said that. Has there been any update since the company went woke, for lack of a better term?
Well, all I'll say on that is that Iger can do that at any time he wants, and the amount of money that it would take to put disclaimers or have 5 minutes of conversation before it or whatever he wants to do is minuscule. So, as we have been saying now quite a bit with Bob Iger, actions speak louder than words, and we are holding Disney to that, especially after this horrific rating situation where they came out and slammed Samba TV and gave this scathing, blathering statement about how great Ahsoka was, and then worlds apart in terms of reality, and now we know it. And so for everything that Iger says now, it is truly actions speak louder than words. Show us, and we'll believe it. Until then,
I know I cut out for a second. I'd like to add something to that. I do know for a fact that there is a 4K restoration of the film that exists on their databases that can be ready at a moment's notice.
Wow. I did not know that, Josh.
The guy who just restored this one, knowing that.
I did not know that. Yeah. That's brand new to me. Wonder why they did that, Josh.
Well, they do it for just basically historical preservation purposes. There's lots of films that have went through a similar process. For example, the Epcot film from 1966, which there have been little clips of it coming that have come out over time. That one's been fully restored, fully done. Also in 4K. There's tons of material inside of the archives, inside of every single.
That's what I was going to say. It's probably some good person inside the archives who said, you know what, this is the film that got the first African American man an Academy Award. We're going to restore it. Don't tell anybody. We're just going to do it right now. So.
Yeah, and sometimes they go with independent companies as well. I saw a video recently that was done by a completely separate company, not Disney, And they were talking about a specific. They said that, yeah, well, we do this kind of process, and it's really, really impressive, and it's really intense. How they get these things to be above perfect quality. And they said, yeah, well, we did one for a major studio, and we said, this is amazing. This is great. You know, it's just like, we should have I can't wait for you guys to release this. And they were just like, oh no, we're definitely not releasing this. We just need you to clean it up and make it as good as possible. But we're never releasing this.
Jonas, do you know why they're never going to release it? I actually know the answer to this. Trippy Nork has given me the solution.
Yes.
No.
The reason they will never release this is because it would beat Ahsoka in the ratings.
It
really would. No, seriously. I'm being facetious, but also factual. It really would. The drama surrounding this film, if they dropped it on Disney Plus, it might. Now this is something. It might beat Bluey.
It would be Bluey for at least a week.
It would be the first time in a long time that something historically significant, longer than a short, was released on Disney Plus.
That is definitely true. All right. Well, look at this. The panel has grown and grown, as the Flintstones would say. Wait a minute. How did the Flintstones vitamins jingle go? I forgot now. 10 million strong and growing. Maybe that's something else. I don't know.
Yeah, is it?
Just always, you always eat Dino, though. Dino was the one to eat. Don't eat Barney. All right. Well, welcome aboard to everybody on the panel. I know KMG and Lester San Jose, you guys have been waiting the longest. Let's go to Lester first. Lester, what are your thoughts on the topic we've been covering, and do you have anything else you'd like for us to discuss today here on this Pro Lounge member-exclusive live stream?
I remember the song Zippity Doo Dah. I sang that in grade school. I didn't know what movie it came from. I didn't even know the title. I don't think I remember seeing the video clip about the song. I just know we were asked to sing it in grade school. But now,
and it's pure joy. Yeah, there's nothing about Zippity Doo Dah that's bad. The thing that they have used to try to take it down, and of course, if you think about all the languages that exist all over the world, you can find a language where you can say, oh, this phoneme right here, this phoneme means a bad thing. Zippity Doo Dah was invented by the Sherman Brothers. Walt loved when they came up with nonsensical words and phrases that had no meaning in any language. He loved for them to come up with that. It was easy to copyright. And so Zippity Doo Dah is right there with supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It has no meaning, and that's the point of it. Zippity Doo Dah. And so, Josh, you had a thought on this one, right?
Yeah. One, this was done long before the Sherman Brothers joined the studio, about roughly 20 years before they joined it.
Talking about Zippity Doo Dah?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, I may have gotten them wrong, but I do remember that when I was interviewing Valerie, and I'm not sure it's on the public side. We may go back and see what we've got on the private side. But Zippity Doo Dah was specifically requested as a nonsensical kind of phrase.
Yeah.
Well, what a bunch of higatus.
Yeah.
Ooh, you heffalump.
It's actually the composer is Ali Robil, and Ray Gilbert was the lyricist for it. The other interesting point about this, too, is that is technically the second Walt Disney Company anthem underneath Wish Upon a Star. It's actually those are the two.
They'll get that one next, Josh.
Yeah.
They'll come for it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
When Wish doesn't do well, that's the end of that. We'll take care of that. The Blue Fairy, she is a pillar of isms. So just get ready.
Didn't you see Pinocchio? They remade the Blue Fairy.
Oh, you're right. They already took out the Blue Fairy. That's right. I remember that. Oh, I'm glad it's a member exclusive live stream here. KMG, you've been sitting back there for a while. What are your thoughts?
I don't. I barely remember seeing clips from Song of the South whenever I was a kid. They used to still show clips on the Disney Channel in the 80s, and that's where I remember seeing it. But, even as a kid, there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. It was a fun musical clip every time that I saw it. And, it's just, it's all of the outrage over it. It's basically, I just posted in the chat. It's exactly what they're trying to do with Gone with the Wind. I mean, they're
Yes.
just trying to erase it. And for what? You know, I mean, Hattie McDaniel, she won the Oscar. She was the first African American woman to ever win an Oscar. And yet, when you watch that movie, like if you pull it up on HBO Max, it's got this massive disclaimer before you watch.
JMG, think about that. Think about that. And everybody out there, think about this. The first two movies, for both the female side and the male side, for an African American to win a major movie award, both of them, one of them successfully, but both of them have been attempted to be taken down, removed, eliminated from history. And that really says something about the people who are attempting to do that.
Yeah.
It's one thing to you know, put it into historical context. It's entirely different to want to eradicate that which first brought African Americans onto the scene, you know, in such a big way. They are pieces of history, and what a tragedy and what a horrendous thing that Disney hides history behind their mouse glove held curtains.
Yep. And I read, and Josh will appreciate this. You know, Gone with the Wind was being considered for a scene in the Great Movie Ride, and they scrapped it. And then, if you recall, it was just in the video montage at the end. But I mean, when you think of, you know, the partnership that they had with MGM for that ride, I mean, if you think of all the MGM movies, you know, in history, Gone with the Wind, I mean, that's as quintessential to that studio as it can get. But you know, Disney was scared, and so they scrapped it from having an actual scene in the ride.
And I think it really goes to show too how quickly our culture has made a hard turn. You know, things have very distinctly changed in the past decades in a way that has remapped the way that we experience culture and the way that we put media into the eyes, into the ears of so many out there. Lester, I saw you had a question or comment while we were talking earlier. Didn't mean to block you from that ability, so drop your thought here if you've still got one.
Just one more thought. Can anyone tell me what makes a story? Because episodes into Ahsoka, I still don't know what the story is. I might need to be reminded of what a story is, what constitutes the beginning, middle, and end.
Well, that's
that is all.
what it is. That's what it is. You have to have you start off with introducing your characters, you bring them into a conflict, and then you have that conflict resolved. That's what a story actually is.
And a story, most of the stories, and we could get into really deep level philosophical discussions here, but most stories that we consume probably follow the monomyth pattern, right? And it's called different thing. The hero's journey is another thing that you might call it. You typically, you know, because entertainment exists for a reason. It doesn't exist because it just magically manifested itself into the world and we all have to do it because of some sort of, you know, nonsensical reason. No, it is part of the cosmos. And its existence in the cosmos seems to be that stories are the way in which we transmit important information. Parables seem to be the way in which we teach an ethic. And so you might think of the Little Red Hen, for example. I brought this up the other day when I was on a show with Carrie Smith, her Pop Culture Unplugged. And, you know, the Little Red Hen, if you sat down with a child and you taught them the ethic, let's say you laid out 10 steps for delayed gratification, and that will lead to success, and you laid out those rules for a small child, you would be extremely unsuccessful in relaying the information you need to the child. However, if you lay out a drama for the child, in this case, the Little Red Hen, you lay out this parable, this metaphor for how delayed gratification works. And over time of repeating this story to the child pulls in the ethic, and then they integrate that into themselves, and then they manifest that ethic into the world, ideally. And that's what we're doing with Star Wars, for example. When you watch Star Wars, the reason that it's more than just fancy FX and space opera is because you're literally watching Luke Skywalker represent innocence, deciding that innocence will go out into the world and make a change into it, then realizing that that is very, very difficult, then realizing that to make the change, you have to recognize the darkness that lies inside you, then realizing that that darkness is so incredible and so powerful that it actually has taken your ancestry and devolved the idea of who you come from. And then from all of that, the story of Star Wars is, well, what do you do then to rescue your father or your ancestors from their own sins? And in the case of Star Wars, the proposition is, well, that you go and you find the good. You find the good and you draw out the good in your ancestors, and that you believe in the good of others, and that good will come from that. That's rather similar to the story of Pinocchio, in parts of it, in Pinocchio, where he goes down into the belly of the whale to rescue his father. He's going down into there, taking on that responsibility to rescue the one who loves him most in order to be a real boy, right? He has to put away being a jackass, which is portrayed literally. He turns into one, but he has to put away being a jackass to swim down into the darkness, into the very belly of the beast, to draw forth the person who loves him most. And in that sacrificial act, risking his life, he becomes a real boy. He becomes human, a man. And so that's what storytelling is about. Storytelling would not, it seems to me, ever have existed except that it transmits deep truths, transcendent truths. And I think that we rank order, actually, entertainment based on the level of truthfulness that the story transmits and the efficiency that it does so. Well, a good story, I think, really transcends and really enraptures you in some sort of difficult question, some difficult thing that you need to overcome. Not the hero. The hero is the representation that you will play through.
Pro, let me throw this back to Song of the South here for a moment. What is the crux of Uncle Remus's exit from the plantation? What is the reason that he leaves the plantation?
He's not on a plantation.
Whatever you want to call the area
there
that he's working, the farm that he is working, that has a house that I understand the reason why you say it's not a plantation, but the house that would have been a plantation under different story. What word should I use here?
No, it's all good. Josh, let's bypass the semantics and let's just get straight to it. Why did Uncle Remus exit the setting?
Well, he noticed that his presence was causing friction with the Bobby Driscoll's family. I can't remember the character's name at this
The
moment.
mother specifically says something to him about his stories being harmful, and she makes him question whether or not his stories are actually too harmful for the children to hear, which is a bit of dramatic poetry, I think, about Uncle Remus himself and the Song of the South.
Wait a minute, Jonas, you're telling me that a movie that the entire moral behind it is that you should not drive out the wise storyteller for fear that his stories will mature the children too quickly. That story has been treated in exactly the same way in reality.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful film. I get why people have problems with it. But also, it is nowhere near as harmful as the press would have you believe. The fact that this film, which is a Disney film, and so yes, it is a little bit more idyllic than a standard film that presents any of these settings,
right? And it wouldn't have played had it been anything else. I mean, people have to understand the labyrinth that Walt had to navigate to get this thing into theaters.
But the moral of the story being that yes, that wisdom can take you through, and in the end, they do need Uncle Remus there. And he does return in the final part of the story and show his value, and he is determined of his own value. I don't know if the dramatic poetry of this will ever happen in real life, where we'll get the real life
return of Uncle Remus.
Exactly, but that's something that's always struck me in watching this movie.
Well, I'm really glad you said that, Jonas, and I'll say too that when it comes to the movie, also, one of the lessons there is that the story transcends the races, right? The ethic that exists inside the stories of Uncle Remus are not simply held by one race or the other. They're true for all of us. And that speaks to the empathy of shared humanity across the races and ethnicities.
Thank you so much for tuning into That Park Place. These weekend videos, we love to do discussion topics, and having Joshua here, and of course all of our members, and thank you to Pro for hosting the discussion. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing. Liking this video helps to boost the signal, and of course, leave a comment if any of our comments inspired your thoughts. We really do love hearing from the people who watch these videos. Thank you so much. Stay tuned to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com for all the news that should be fun. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.